I have been gone for some time now. Listen, man, it's been a dry summer, both temperature and media-wise. Summer is supposed to be blockbuster season, but the only blockbusters we're getting are like live-action remakes and legacy sequels. But finally, something came around. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia had yet another season premiere just this morning, as of me writing this, and it came with a bonus. I only got into Always Sunny last year, but let me tell you, I binged the hell out of this show. At the time, it was 16 seasons, and I ran through it all in about 3 or 4 months. This series is simply addictive. It's more grounded in presentation than most sitcoms, but about 10 times as bizarre in terms of story. I can't even exactly remember what caused me to get into this show, but now it's hard to remember a time when I didn't know and love it. Sunny has had a bit of a fall off ever since season 13, just as many sitcoms do, but instead of falling from pretty good to downright awful, Sunny fell from top tier to pretty good, so you can still count on the gang to bring it. The question is, did they bring it with the season 17 premiere? Let's begin. Going episode by episode makes sense, so let's start with the Abbott Elementary crossover ending. I never offered my thoughts on the first crossover episode when it was released, but I did watch it, and it was fine. I think I personally don't care much for Abbott Elementary's style, but I certainly haven't seen enough to be sure of that. The episode made decent use of Frank and Charlie, I would say, though Mac, Dennis, and Dee were all pretty whatever. What this second part was meant to deliver on was a couple of things. Firstly, we were meant to get the vulgar side of Abbott, since we are in the Sunny world now, and it's true, they do say mean words in this one. And second, we were meant to see what Dennis was doing behind the scenes. This one I feel like they didn't really deliver on, because Dennis does not go solo or really commit to any plan. He's probably the most innocent of all of them for most of it, since all he's focused on is the coffee. However, we do get some banger Glenn Howerton deliveries as usual, one of which is in the first 3 minutes when he says, They're really dirty and you're not doing a good job. Generally, I can't say this episode feels like Sunny. I expected it to be filmed in the Sunny style, but for some reason, we're still working with the Abbott Elementary camera crew angle. The characters also feel somewhat like self-parodies, most especially Dee. Basically, every move Dee takes in this episode is predictable, and since she has a lot of screen time in the first part, all of her relevance is off-screen, and we simply see her reactions to it, which is usually blind rage that just comes off as a bit forced, even if Caitlin makes it entertaining. Probably the most consistent annoyance I had with this special was the lampshading of the gang's insanity. Persistently throughout the episode, whenever something the gang does goes in a weird direction, we'll cut to Ava from Abbott watching the footage and saying something like, "These guys are crazy." We've seen stuff like this in Sunny, but never so unnaturally, which I think is to do with the mixing of styles once again. Abbott's scriptwriting appears to be more literal and less chaotic, which I imagine works better when it's not fighting for the spotlight. I'm not all negative on this episode at all. In fact, I actually think it's better than part 1. Having the gang run through various plans without us even seeing how they begin or end honestly plays into their wildness, and I was strangely impressed by the child actors so easily adapting to the group's nature. The kid they hire to be the bad boy of their boy band felt like a character who would have been in a Sunny episode regardless of any crossover. Still, the series felt stunted by this mix, and it's possible that this was more of a result of the creators being friends than the shows naturally matching. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Now, Frank is in a coma, on the other hand, was an absolute banger through and through. This episode, as many have said, felt like classic Sunny. The boys scheming up a plan, the characters making you think they have morals just to pull the rug out from under you once again, and a classic Sunny staple that starts things off after the cold open, which is the gang all having a full-blown argument before the camera pans to reveal someone else was in the room the entire time. This time it's a sort of hospice worker who recruits Dee to be the person to take care of Frank, which results in the boys immediately ditching her to go to a gala. And this whole gala plotline is just chef's kiss, I gotta say. It is full of clever bits which feel like the old days. Mac as a character has certainly regressed in recent years, and though I don't think the change with this episode is as drastic as most seem to think, it does feel like Rob has gotten back to what makes Mac Mac, and the scene in which he instantly attempts to run through the walls of the gala, we need more of that. My favorite bit, possibly in the whole episode though, is when the three are mistaken as waiters, then between scenes become incredibly devoted to their jobs, Charlie even gets on a first-name basis with the other workers. I really appreciate how this series can take an already funny bit, then add another layer to it just to make the cast laugh, because that feels a lot like what this is. Afterwards, they finally meet a person who might be able to make their plan work, which is to take Patty's global. And this guy, Simon, he's a character. The best way I can describe him is that he is a man ripped straight from the mind of Jesse Armstrong. He is Succession in every way, and it's obnoxious. Fun, though. It's very fun when we get to see a character who is just as depraved as the gang, and this guy is certainly up there. He's played by Alex Wolff, of all people, who I respect so much for committing with his full body to this role. Simon is so excitable and weird. He jumps up in the air randomly like a psycho, and when he brings Dennis, Mac, and Charlie to what seems to be a crack house, the first thing he does when he enters the room is start making out with a random dude and then pass out. It becomes pretty clear with each moment that Simon is not really going to get Patty's anywhere, and so the boys just kind of leave, having, in classic fashion, gotten nothing done. As this is all happening, Dee gets her dream of playing a one-woman show, only having the hospice nurse to play off of, and if Dee was disappointing in the first episode, then this more than makes up for it. Caitlin is off the wall here, not really in mourning for Frank, but clearly in distress. Once it becomes clear that the boys aren't coming back anytime soon, she just starts ransacking Frank's things, and I love that her standards get so low so fast after she realizes how little he actually has in the apartment. The exaggerated "whoa" when she finds a single $5 bill is just absolutely carnal. But then, of course, things turn when Dee finds Frank has kept a drawing of hers from her childhood as his most prized possession, and Caitlin just nails the tone shift. Dee hasn't really gotten an emotional moment in a while, and the voice break she has during the scene actually got to me. It gets even worse when the boys return and they're about to put Frank to sleep. This is probably the only time where the entire group has been able to have a moment of emotion together, and I feel like their faces match their characters. Mac is the most shocked, Charlie is the most sad, and Dennis is the most uncomfortable. But of course we know Frank isn't going to die. It wasn't a secret that Danny would be in the rest of the season, so there must be some twist. And there is. That's not even him. You see, at the beginning of the episode, Frank is immersed in the Is It Cake show that you might remember from a couple years back. It's pretty awkward, and it feels dated, but it passes and you forget. Then at the end of the episode, Frank walks in, revealing the hoax. The nurse is a paid actor, the drawing was fake, and the body in the bed is, in fact, cake. It's masterful. They hold the emotional moment long enough that it will remain memorable in the fandom, then remind you just who these bastards are. It's this perfect craft that allows us to get attached to the characters that we also hate. It wouldn't feel right for Frank to go peacefully, surrounded by people who care about him. That's not Sunny. This is Sunny. I love this episode. It's much better than The Gang Fucks Up Abbott, though I can't say it's the best in the past few seasons. Personally, I'd take Dennis's mental health day, and maybe even bowling, though this is definitely better than anything in seasons 14 and 15. It's an 8.5. And it told me that we're still in good hands. Overall, a solid premiere. Somehow it feels like there's gas left in the tank of this old-ass engine. The showrunners are still finding new things to do with each member of the gang that fit perfectly. Like, I'm actually surprised the bit they did with Charlie not understanding sleep at the beginning of episode 2 hasn't been done before. It totally feels in line with his explanation of him burning trash and it turning into stars, and it made me laugh my ass off just the same. In the next few episodes, I'd say I'm personally looking for more Mac and Charlie, a more subversive role for Dee, and I'd like to see some of our side characters because we haven't really seen anybody but the gang yet. I don't mind waiting though, as long as the payoff is worth it. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next week when Mac and Dennis become EMTs. Bye now.